Hello and welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host Timothy Ferguson. This week, moral luck. For this podcast to make sense, you need to be familiar with the idea of moral luck. You can either watch an excellent YouTube video on moral luck by Hank Green, links in the show notes, or listen to my 10-second version of how Thomas Nagel uses the term. Imagine two people with two identical cars who leave two identical parties and drive home equally drunk. A child darts out into the road before driver 1 and he does not stop in time. No child appears before driver 2 and he returns home safely. Who has acted more immorally? The conventional answer is that the guy who killed a child has acted more immorally. Nagel's question is, why is that? If we assume people are only responsible for their choices and not for external factors over which they had no control, why do drivers 1 and 2 not share the same degree of moral culpability? What's the difference? Is it just that 2 was lucky? Moral luck's a deep topic and I can't cover it in a short podcast, but I'd like to show how this teases out in Mythic Europe. Nagel suggests that the way through this puzzle is to look at different kinds of moral luck. The first is constitutive luck, which is to have the good fortune to have physical or psychological characteristics which guard us from situations of moral hazard. These in Ars Magica are literally called virtues, and the lack of this style of luck are flaws. Nagel has a second category, antecedent luck, which suggests that the way circumstances have moulded you up to this point influences your performance, and this is most strongly reflected in Ars Magica by the personality trait system, but also in virtues, flaws, and ability experience. Circumstantial luck is modelled through story flaws and the Covenant, Boon and Hook system. It encompasses the fortune you have to be born into a society and a stratum where your moral action is easy. Luck of consequent circumstances is the luck driver 2 has in the example given previously. Having done an immoral thing, they have the good fortune not to cause harm, and so not to be culpable. This is an effect of those virtues that allow re-rolls or bonuses on skill rolls like knacks. It's also pure luck of the dice. If you make your roll, you didn't do the terrible thing. Nagel, by the way, thinks that both drivers are equally immoral. He sees wrongdoing and harm as related, but separate, things. In Mythic Europe, there's a complicated relationship between choice, action, result, and moral blame. This matters because your characters will be judged after death, and are surrounded by demonic forces that put their thumb on the scale, tempting you toward damnation. Does moral luck, or its lack, give demons something new to do? The obvious first step is for demons to ensure consequential ill luck. A demon pushes the child onto the road or lets the child out of their house, so they're wandering near the street. Your blameworthy action is due to ill circumstances, but the circumstances are constructed in a way that you cannot see. You have circumstantial ill luck. One of the main reasons for the existence of the Dominion is to keep these tiny demons of ill luck away from the faithful. One set of folklore about one of the Dukes of Hell is that he does ill by doing good. He helps you build a bridge that at some future point an army will cross to raise your village. He gives you a ride home just in time to catch your wife in bed with a neighbour. He sharpens the knife that slips and cuts off your finger. He lends you money, and that attracts robbers, gamblers, and temptresses. He doesn't seem to work in 5th edition because demons can't plan. But if you accept that the desire to do ill is of itself and ill, he doesn't need to plan. He can hurt you without needing to foresee your choices. Similarly, demons can generate antecedent ill luck. Demons which trick you into exercising vices make you more likely to act viciously in the future. This places you in a situation of moral hazard. The demon doesn't, to mix models, make you drink and drive knowing you'll hit a child, but it does encourage you to drink, and it encourages pride in your ability to drive. It manufactures the preconditions of your moral ill luck. To stretch this idea further, let's look at how Mythic Europeans viewed the ideas around moral luck. The hardest line on this is a particular reading of Jesus, coming from the Sermon on the Mount. The 5th chapter of Matthew is often thought of as one of Jesus' more cuddly outings because it's where he talks about turning the other cheek, but he also says, And this is the King James Version, chapter 5, verse 27. "And you have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell." End quote. So, to a hardline follower of Jesus, the desire to commit a sin is itself a sin, even if there is no plan to act on the desire. The desire is itself an act. This isn't strictly parallel to the two-driver problem given previously, but it's a fresh wrinkle. To a hardline follower of Jesus, the sin occurs when the driver decides to get his keys out, not when he turns the ignition or hits the kid. Origen is one of my favourite church fathers because of his insistence on the universal redemption of everything, even demons, and the possibility that hell was empty. But his heterodoxy went into the terrifying the church level when he and his followers, at least according to some histories, taking Jesus quite literally, saw Matthew as a call to self-castration. The church quickly tells people that this is not what was intended at all, but Origen's idea of the absolute mortification of the flesh to make it a suitable spiritual vessel bubbles along in the Gnostic underground of Christianity. In 1220, the perfecti of the Cathars aren't cutting bits of themselves off, but they similarly disdain the flesh because they think it's a source of immorality. The urges of the flesh, even if you don't act on them, are sins. You don't need to do harm to others to be immoral. You just need to disobey God, thereby harming yourself. The hierarchy of the church took a view closer to that of modern people. Sin is necessarily voluntary. Your sinning eye is just a metaphor for your mental state. If you want to sin, you are sinning, sure, but that's not the same as actually doing things. Thoughts can break the law of God, and so are personally harmful to the thinker, but that's not nearly so heinous as deliberately hurting someone else. The literal argument, and the self-mutilation it engenders, are heresy. Demons can spread that heresy, thereby appearing holy. Something more for demons to do. Dante is popular in later history, but he has so eclipsed our view of medieval theology that his ideas show up in Ars Magica before his birth. As his books continue, the narrator tours hell and meets people carefully taxonomized by their sins. Their punishments suit their crimes in an almost Mikado-esque way. These crimes require acts, and you're basically punished eternally for your single worst act. Note that your lesser evil acts can't matter. Librarians know this taxonomy problem. If you put a book about feminist views of Mary in the section on feminism, you can't put the exact same copy of that book in the section on Mariology. Judas, for example, is ground in the mouth of the devil for his betrayal. His covetousness of money gets to slide because there can only be one classification at a time. In a particularly forgiving view of hell, you might suggest that the sinner ascends through the punishments as they are purged of their vices. There's still, however, a stratification by acts. You are still classified by your worst day. If you are judged by what happens to you on your worst day, demons don't have to degrade you into an inveterate sinner. They get to roll the dice on you day after day after day until finally the numbers come up their way. Demons can't plan. They just need to rely on the law of large numbers. If every attempt at temptation pushes someone toward constitutive ill luck, then a sort of Brownian motion of tiny demons suffices to damn most people. I was thinking about this and the musical Hamilton and Aaron Burr. He's got problems. I'm not saying that Burr is a saint, but as Lin-Manuel Miranda notes, he's cautious his whole life except for this one time when he thinks he's in mortal danger, and so he shoots Hamilton. He doesn't repent this for years. He regrets it. He refers to Hamilton as my friend who I shot, but it's not until he's an old man that he accepts that killing Hamilton was wrong rather than unlucky. In Dante's version, that gets young Burr a spot in hell, except if his shot misses. Then young Burr might still get in for pride or wanting to kill someone, but he doesn't get the lower circle treatment. Luck, the good fortune to get what you want at the moment of moral weakness is damning in Mythic Europe. And this means that a familiar demon sticking around Burr can just be persistently helpful. It doesn't need to ask for his soul, it just needs to make sure he fires first, or fires cleanly, or to make sure that Burr notices that Hamilton is wearing his glasses, and to link that idea to Hamilton intending to aim precisely. Demons don't need to be metal guys demanding you sacrifice kittens and write contracts in blood. Many of them like that sort of thing, because they have no self-constraint, but they don't require it to damn people. They can just give you what you want, for free, and this could be a new character creation virtue. How Hermetic Law deals with moral luck is interesting. It cares about outcome, about harm. It does this because even though it literally can know motive, finding it out is too difficult. So it needs to find people who have done things and then make examples out of them as a form of social deterrence. I'm not sure intention matters much. This may vary by house. In some Greek philosophy, for example, intent doesn't matter. Oedipus kills his father and has sex with his mother by accident. When he discovers this, he destroys himself. His antecedent moral luck is terrible, and this overrides the modern idea that if you don't know something, you aren't culpable for that thing. Some fairies have a similarly literal interpretation of agreements. Hermetic Law forbids acts. You not knowing the consequences may mitigate what a tribunal assesses as the penalty, but it's the act, not the motive, that matters. This is important because the self is less united in Mythic Europe than we like to think. Each person is body, spirit, and soul, and there are cases of the spirit acting on its own, or even parts of the spirit acting on their own. I'm not talking a strict Jekyll and Hyde here, although there is the moral question of if Jekyll is responsible for Hyde's actions, but there are related cases. If, while you sleep, your spirit takes the form of a wolf and worries cattle or even eats people, to what extent are you morally culpable? If part of your spirit is sheared off and becomes a monster you must defeat, are you the monster? In Hermetic Law, yes, you are responsible. Otherwise, House Titalis could just use their habit of creating false personae to commit crimes and then have the criminal melt away into nothing, unreachable by the law. This means that all a fairy or demon has to do to damn you in the eyes of the Order is make sure that your consequential luck is bad. Criminality having a moral as well as a legal outcome, your character's lucky virtues don't just protect you from bad in-game events, they shield your characters from the moral consequences of causing harm.